It was just before dawn, in one of the most dangerous maritime crossroads on Earth. The Strait of Malacca, a narrow, crowded artery that carries a quarter of the world's traded goods. For centuries, these waters have seen pirates, typhoons, and great naval powers. But on August 21st, 2017, it wasn't an enemy submarine or missile that crippled one of America's most advanced warships. It was something far more ordinary and far more unsettling. This is the story of the USS John S. McCain, a collision that claimed 10 lives, and the year-long struggle to bring her back from the brink. At exactly 5:24 a.m. local time, the silence shattered. The USS John S. McCain, a U.S. Navy guided missile destroyer, slammed into the 600-foot oil and chemical tanker Alnic MC. The impact tore a jagged hole in the warship's port side aft, the left rear section, flooding sleeping quarters, machinery rooms, and the shaft alley. Within seconds, darkness and seawater swallowed entire compartments. 10 sailors were missing. 5 more were injured, one badly enough to be airlifted to Singapore by a Navy helicopter. And the strangest part? The McCain was not in combat. She was heading to a routine port visit in Singapore after a week of tense operations in the South China Sea. Just days earlier, she had sailed near one of China's man-made islands, a deliberate act of defiance known as a freedom of navigation operation. Beijing's response was swift and angry. Now, east of Singapore, under a sky still black from the night, the McCain's mission had turned into a rescue operation. Ship tracking data would later reveal a peculiar sequence. The Alnic MC, traveling at 10.8 knots on a heading of 228 degrees, was part of a cluster of cargo ships approaching Singapore's eastern lanes. Suddenly, the tanker veered sharply to port, its speed bleeding off just as it struck the destroyer. Other vessels steamed on undisturbed. The Alnic MC appeared to reverse away before continuing slowly towards Singapore, sustaining its own damage 23 feet above the waterline. Why it maneuvered this way remains one of the collision's most haunting questions. Inside the McCain, chaos reigned. Water poured in. Crew members fought to seal bulkheads to save both their ship and the shipmates trapped below. Damage control efforts were brutal but effective. They stopped the flooding. They kept her afloat. And against all odds, the McCain made it to Changi Naval Base under her own power, battered but alive. A photograph taken at port shows her riding low in the water, a dark wound visible just above the waterline. The loss was a staggering blow, not just for the crew, but for the entire US Navy. It came only 2 months after another 7th Fleet destroyer, the USS Fitzgerald, was nearly sunk in a collision off Japan, killing 7 sailors. 2 deadly collisions in 64 days. The world began to ask, was the US Navy overstretched in the Pacific? Too many missions, too few trained crews. The Navy's own internal voices warned of fatigue, watchstanding errors, and lapses in seamanship. Even as the ship was secured at Changi, the search for the missing continued. Singapore and Malaysia deployed ships, helicopters, and Coast Guard vessels. US Navy MV-22 Ospreys and SH-60 Seahawks scoured the sea. Malaysian Navy Chief Ahmad Kamarul Zaman tweeted, "Pray for their safety." 10 prayers would go unanswered. The McCain's damage was catastrophic but repairable, at a cost. She was sent to dry dock in Yokosuka, Japan, where the painstaking process of rebuilding began. Investigators found that a confusing transfer of steering control moments before the collision caused a loss of situational awareness on the bridge. Combined with the congested waters of the Strait of Malacca, it was a recipe for disaster. The findings were a sobering reminder. Even the most advanced warships in the world are vulnerable, not just to enemy fire, but to human error and the chaotic reality of the sea. For the McCain, the journey back was long. Welders replaced steel, engineers rebuilt systems. Every inch of her hull was inspected, reinforced, and tested. It took nearly 1 full year before the USS John S. McCain sailed again. In late 2018, she returned to operational duty, repaired, refitted, and ready. But for her crew, the scars remained. 10 names would never answer roll call again. And every sailor aboard knew the sea doesn't forgive, and it never forgets. The collision of the USS John S. McCain was more than a maritime accident. It was a wake-up call to a navy operating at its limits, and a stark reminder that in the most crowded waters on Earth, danger can come without warning.